Hey coaches, hey athletes, I'm talking to both of you. We've talked about how you can stretch your hips. We've talked about how you can stretch your butt, your lower back stretches, your core stretches, things like that to take care of your hips. Now you probably have seen the video where I rant about how important it is to keep our lower backs safe and neutral, okay? Because again, with a good solid structure, we can stem out and have all the power in the world. But without a good foundation, we have nothing, okay? We don't have a good foundation to build up our skyscraper of strength, right? So let's talk foundation. So there are a lot of parts in our body, a lot of joints in our body, and some need the ability to move. And your hips are one of those. We call it mobility, okay? The ability to just move, okay? So, yes, I've shown you all the videos on how to stretch, but an athlete that can stretch is not necessarily an athlete that moves well. Even when we're talking functional movement screens or just checking for potential for injury, we see, can your joint go through this particular range of motion? In some cases, it's can you control that range of motion? But again, even when you get cleared to work out, it doesn't mean you're moving perfectly. And it's not that we can ever move perfectly, but there are definitely ways we can move better. So here's what I always recommend. When you're stretching, when you're doing any foam rolling, mobility tactics, or whatever, first of all, I always recommend you do them in between doing whatever exercise you're trying to get better at. So I'll use an example of myself. When I'm doing squats, if I feel like, okay, my knee is bugging me a little bit, well, I know that it's maybe this muscle, right? The inner part of my quad is usually the problem, but it's usually this muscle. Okay, so if I foam roll it, great. Maybe if I can do a couple stretches, good. The pain is gone. But that doesn't mean that that automatically makes my movement better just because I got rid of the discomfort or got rid of the pain. I need to figure out, okay, what is my problem? Are my knees tracking appropriately? Okay. Is my ankle bending as appropriately as it needs to while maintaining my full foot on the floor? Okay. Then, are my hips doing what they need to be doing? Okay. This is where a lot of people get frustrated, get confused, that just because you're lowering your butt down and standing back up doesn't mean that you're squatting in a way that can actually make you stronger. You can actually plateau pretty quickly. So, when you're squatting, let's say when you're deadlifting, we need certainly mobility, but we need range of motion in our hips, but we need active control. Okay? So, when you're squatting, as you sit down, there are certain muscles in your body that need to be stretching, and you need to feel them stretching. Then, that way, as they stretch, other muscles are contracting. So let's use a squat for an example. As you sit down into the bottom of a squat, typically, we want our quadricep, the top of our leg, to stretch. Okay? Why? Because when we want to come up, we want that muscle to contract in order to bring us up. Okay? Certainly your butt does it too, but we're just talking quads and hamstrings here. So, as you want a certain muscle to stretch, we need the antagonist, the other muscle, to contract. Okay? So, in a squat sense, as I lower myself down, in order to get my quadriceps to stretch, that means that I need certain parts of my glutes, okay, but parts of my hamstring to come together. That way, as I descend down, I am getting the most stretch in my quadriceps while maintaining as neutral of a spine as I can. Now, how do I know that I'm doing it right? Well, this is no good, okay? My hips are tucked under, my hamstrings are way too tight. This is no good because I'm bent over, okay? Here is where I know, okay, at any time, from right here, whether I'm in this position, this position, this position, this position, this position, all the way down at the bottom, at any time, I can come up. That's a great way for you to check, are your athletes actually in control? Or are they just dropping out of the sky? Because if they are in fact just dropping out of the sky, and at any given moment you couldn't have them just stop and change and go the other way, depending upon how heavy it is, right? If it's a 1 rep max and you stop them early, sure, chances are they're not going to be able to do it. But let's say you just put the bar on their back, or a moderate weight, 50% of their max, let's just say. So if they can do 100 pounds, you put 50 pounds total. If you have them go down and up and down and up, and at any given instance they couldn't stop, they're probably not using their body appropriately, okay? Same with deadlifts, same with shoulder presses, everything. If they just all of a sudden, let's say we're doing a shoulder press, and you just have them stop and just all of a sudden they die, that's a problem. Same with your squats, right? Again, if I told you to stop, you should stop, okay? Your legs should instantly, your quadriceps should instantly turn on when you stop. And then if you want to continue down, and if I told you to stop, your legs should instantly turn on. And if I come down, stop, your quad should instantly turn on. That way, again, we know that at any given time, we know if we need to come right back up, your quadriceps are turning on out of a squat. Or in a deadlift situation, as you're picking it up, stop, you should instantly feel your hamstrings slightly contract and hold. Then come up, stop, you should feel them hold, depending upon your position. But again, we need you coaches to understand there's a difference between just doing a range of motion and having control. We've talked about this before, the difference between passive movement and active movement. But it's time for you guys to actually test your athletes. Are you actively moving or are you passively? And the great way to do it is tell them to stop.